show. My name is Chad. Today we are going to be talking with Wendy Martin, who does a graphic novel series, Castle Swimmer, and Volume 2 just came out a couple weeks ago from 10 Speed Graphic. And Wendy's here to chat with us about the series and herself. So let me bring her in and let's find out about her in the book. Hi, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you doing?
I'm running this way and that way. Uh, So, before we get started talking about Castle Swimmer, tell me a little bit about yourself, uh, both as a reader of comics or cartoons and as a creator.
Hmm. Well, I've always been doing art and wanting to make comics ever since I was younger. I'm actually from the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa, and I just recently, I think like 2 years ago, moved to Seattle. Um, but yeah, it was hard to find good kind of comics and media in the middle of the Midwest in Iowa. So I spent a lot of time online. But I think when I was younger, I've always been into comics in different forms. So when I was growing up, I was into those like book-sized prints of like strips of Garfield and like Calvin and Hobbes. And then when I was became a teenager in high school, I got into manga and other types of graphic novels. So I've always been wanting to make comics, and I have done that now.
And so, what it sounds like reading them when it made you want to become a creative yourself. Was there any other thing that kind of inspired you to, you know, try to make your own?
Yeah, well, I was into art, so I liked doing art. I always liked drawing. I think for a short while, I considered like being an illustrator, but I just really enjoyed storytelling, and like comics is like the perfect, mix of art and storytelling without the more complicated skills like animation and having to get a whole team for a big project. So it was kind of the right balance of things to fulfill me creatively.
All right, so let's talk about Castle Swimmer. As I said, we're volume two, but which assumes that there's a volume one. So this is like the second half of the story or another part of the story. So for those who aren't familiar with the webtoon series, tell us a little bit about about Castle Swimmer and the inspiration behind that.
For sure. Well, it is a mermaid story. It takes place underwater. A big inspiration was that I wanted to. A lot of mermaid stories involve, the mermaid leaving the water and exploring land, and that kind of fun juxtaposition. I wanted to make one where they just stay underwater and they kind of have adventures down there and what life would be like. So it's kind of a fantasy adventure story. It is about a shark prince and his people are under a curse, and the only way to break the curse is for him to sacrifice this other merman that is kind of exists in all prophecies. But instead of sacrificing him, he falls in love with him instead and create shenanigans.
So, yeah, I mean, So, having said that, who are the two main characters, and tell us a little bit about their, you know, origins and creation, process that you went through when you were creating them.
Yeah, so the two main characters are Kappa and Siren. Kappa is kind of like this mermaid Jesus figure who exists in all mystical prophecies, but he's kind of like a regular dude that's kind of annoyed by all this magic stuff going on. And we have Siren. He's the shark prince. He is very isolated, and he has this heavy duty placed on him that he is not doing a good job of fulfilling. Um, I think the original inspiration was like I was very inspired by like if fish were people, how would that the designs of their fish form translate to how they are as people. How would they act? How would their culture be? And yeah, a shark with a cap is kind of like based on a koi fish or like
Hmm.
a goldfish. So that big shark with tiny fish was a fun idea as well. Um, and and yeah, not a lot of inspiration kind of like I can think of for their character. They kind of like changed a lot when I first was conceptualizing them. But then when I stuck them into the story and all these problems, their personalities kind of developed, and it was very fun to play around with.
Since this is, we're talking about volume two that just came out. Kind of talk about what happens in volume one, where this volume picks up, and a general idea of where it goes.
Yeah. So in the webtoon, it's a little bit farther along, but book one and two are kind of the first like big chunk of the story. I guess like the first act, maybe
Mhm.
you could say it. So it's like book one is like um let's see, it's like a much of a setup, and where the stakes are raised very high, and it cuts off at a very important moments. And the book two is kind of like the follow up of the rising action, and kind of the conclusion of this shorter part of the story.
Okay.
That was spoiling too much.
Yeah, no, no, I understand. So, as you've been writing this series for the webtoon and being collected, is there any characters that you've grown attached to other than these, let's say, the two main characters?
Yes, I kind of have a problem of getting really attached to side characters and giving them too much screen time. That isn't always best for pacing. But I think there were some characters that were supposed to die at one point, and I let them live because I just became attached to them.
And yeah, you said that you kind of, do you want to explore? Are there plans to explore these other characters that more, or are you just trying to zero in on the two main characters and their story?
I do like to give everyone like a amount of screen time that seems fair and well paced in a story that is not about them. So I try to give them the characters I like their own special moments, but I do try to like keep the focus on our main boys and not get too distracted.
So let's take a step even further back and let's talk about your process, both writing and the art. How you go about that uh, when you're doing your art. Do you work digitally, a hybrid, or anything like that?
Yeah, I do everything digital now. I started working on I used to draw digitally on a Wacom Cintiq, and I've since switched to the iPad just because it's like easier to like pick up and walk over to a coffee shop and keep working. Um, and I work in the program Clip Studio Paint. I used to work in Photoshop as well. So I've kind of gone all digital. There's a part of me that misses traditional art, but it's very convenient being digital.
And a rough estimate of time, like from putting down the script to the art to the finished product. How does that? how what's kind of your timetable or on that?
Um, well, I always when first creating it, I work on the webtoon schedule, which is you're supposed to get an episode done in a week, which is 50 full color panels done in a week. And I'm always struggling with that. But I try to get all the writing, like the rough draft of the story. I kind of have like an outline of the whole story that I follow mostly and should
Mhm.
be following. But I spend like one day kind of drafting out the episodes, and then I try my best to get like all of the artwork done for the rest of the week. So I'll spend like a I think 3 days, 3 to 4 days on line art, and then there's like the last day I'll just be doing the colors, and I have like two assistants that kind of like help me get the flat colors and art done so that I can try to meet my deadlines, which I rarely do. But it's all kind of crunched into a week, which is tricky, but also nice because it kind of forces you to move the story along. So it has good and bad sides.
Now, is there a, I mean, because this is the a printed copy of the webtoon. Um, is there was it a challenge to adapt the webtoon to the book, or was there some things that you had to move around?
Yeah, it was a huge challenge, and I definitely don't think the book would exist if I did not have help from my publisher. And they reached out to another artist to like do like the brunt work of the reformatting from the scrolling vertical webtoon format into like a horizontal book, which is way harder to do than you would think. Um,
Oh,
you think it's just
it sounds really hard to me.
you think you just like stick a panel and just move it, but there's like so much reformatting and like back and forth that goes on to try to make it work. And I'll go in and like do editing, and a lot of people will look at it and kind of make decisions. And through that collaborative effort, it can be a full horizontal traditional format book now, which I'm very happy that this has happened.
Now, volume two ends on a cliffhanger. I assume there's going to be, well, obviously there's more up on webtoons, but will there be more volumes of the printed copy, hopefully?
Yes, if everything goes well, I think we can expect to see more books. I'm not sure how much I can say on it, but I think things are going well, is all I'll say.
Do you have a, I guess, is there a finite story you want to tell, but also a story, stories that you could tell within that world?
Oh, good question. I do have the main story. It's tricky because when I first got the job with Webtoon, like my story got picked up, I was afraid I'd never ever get another job in comics. So I kind of set the story up to where I'm like, they just have adventures forever and ever, and the story will never end, so that I can have this job always. So there is like a lot of possible side stories that could happen, but I do
Mhm.
have like the main actual story that has like is better structured and has a good ending.
Looking at the art, I see a lot of manga influences in your style. You want to talk a little bit about that and any artists who may influence you or inspire you.
Oh man, there's so many. I did a lot of manga reading when I mean, I still read manga. I love the art style. I think I just like the cute, pretty characters with big sparkly eyes. You know,
Yeah.
easy to like. I actually I have a problem where I find like an artist I like, and then like I immediately like change my art style to like pick up all those. So my art style is like always changing. And if you like read these books and then like look at where we are in the webtoon right now, I think you'll like be shocked by the change. It's like, wow, it looks different now. But trying to think of any specific artists. I'm not sure. I think it was just like a culmination of all the manga I was reading at the time that really influenced the current style and how my art looks.
Okay. So I know there's in the back of the book there's a page about the fishy inspirations for the characters. Um, well, if you were having to design yourself based on a fish or a sea creature, what would it be?
Oh, good question. Um, I feel like I would be like a crab or a worm or some kind of weird under the sand bottom creature.
Mhm. Okay. Now, looking at the getting the inspiration for the characters and using those different fish and sea creatures. Did that involve a lot of research, or just kind of looking at pictures and saying that's a cool looking creature? I'm going to base a character off that.
I did do research. I mean, I hesitate to call it research because I don't always like follow the rules at all. I feel like I would at the beginning I would kind of get wrapped up in like biological accurate facts about fish and be like, "Oh, I can't do this and this." But then I had to remind myself like this is a fantasy story about mermaids. I can literally do like whatever I want. So I
Yeah.
kind of made a rule that I can let fish facts inspire me, but they're not allowed to hinder me. So I kind of like pick and choose facts and interesting things about the fish species that inspire me to work into the story to where I think it like fits as a cohesive narrative and something fun and charming to add to the characters.
This, the series and this book is definitely a good read, especially during the month of June, which is Pride Month.
Thank you.
Um, how do you feel that the series has been, received by your audience? And I hope this doesn't come out wrong, but what was the idea of making it a queer romantasy story?
I myself am a lesbian, and like growing up in the Midwest, I think you kind of, especially at the time I grew up, there was not very much media with queer characters. And when
Okay.
I first was making comics, I feel like because kind of want to be successful as a comic artist, so and you don't see queer characters, so the idea of putting characters like you in your own work almost doesn't even cross your minds. But when I got more into the comic scene and people online, and I saw other creators actually making stories with queer characters, I'm like, oh, I can actually do that. I'm going to do that
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
um, so yeah, I just because of just being in the queer community and all my friends being queer, I've just like always now I always just make queer characters in my stories, and I'm very fortunate and lucky that it's been so well received and loved by my readers.
While you're telling the story, are you um, trying to tell, or I guess tell a larger story, maybe with lessons for the reader that you hope that they get and connect with?
I suppose so. It does go into like some like mental health related themes and stuff. But honestly, when I go into a story, my goal is just to make like a fun story with queer characters. And I think yeah, just through writing and getting deep in the sauce, I end up like touching on a few things and try to do my best to represent things as best I can, do it
Sure.
well.
So, as you've been doing Castle Swimmer, uh, obviously you have been doing it for a while. Um, what advice would you have your younger self who's just starting Castle Swimmer that you know now that you wish you knew then?
Oh man, I would tell my younger self to not beat yourself up over not keeping up with like deadlines and being the perfect artist and struggling to get like the 50 panels done a week because it's just like kind of impossible to keep up with that schedule. It's just very tough. And I
Hmm.
used to think that I was just like, I just need to be better. But now I understand that I was doing the best I can, and I still am. So I would just tell myself to give yourself some grace and know that it's tough. Just do your best.
Besides a great story and a fun read, um, what do you hope that readers take away from this?
Hmm. I kind of would love if it would inspire them to make their own stories and get into comics. Because I think about like all the comics that inspired me when I was younger, and it in turn made me want to make comics and create stories. So if I was able to like pass down in that way, that would be super cool.
Anything else you'd like to mention about Castle Swimmer or this volume that maybe we haven't talked about?
Um, I don't know. I just can't believe it's a book now. It's actually when I was working on that artwork, that was like about like 7 years ago. So the fact that it actually gets to be a book now is crazy, and I couldn't be happier.
How's your experience with you? You said it was, the schedule is very demanding. How has your experience with Webtoon been?
Um, it has been good. I guess it's the same as working for any publisher or company, where you just kind of everyone's kind of just doing their best to keep up with the work. But it did, it gave me a job making comics, which is like the greatest job I could ever ask for. So I'm always grateful for that, in spite of any of the tough deadlines and things like that.
And where can people find you on social media if you're there, or are you planning on doing any conventions or anything like that?
I will be at San Diego Comic Con, I think, for most of the days.
Okay.
um, and yeah, other than that, you can just find me on social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm boring and don't have a fun pin name, so my name on social media is just Wendy Leanne Martin. So
Okay.
yeah, I've got Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the fun ones.
And you want to give a quick pitch for volume two?
Volume two um, is the great escape for the boys trying to get out of the castle, and it does not go smoothly. So we can, if you want to see if they make it out, check out the book.
And the continuing adventures are obviously over on Webtoon,
That's
correct?
right. Hmm.
Well, Castle Swimmer Volume 2 is out now. There's both the hardcover and the paperback. And Wendy, thank you for taking the time today to chat with us. And if you ever want to come back and chat about Volume 3 when it's ready, then would love to do that, see how things are going. And we'll talk about how you feel you've grown going, having 3 volumes of a printed book under your belt.
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, well, thanks for taking the time to chat with us, and we'll be in touch.
Awesome.